I have to say that in retrospect, I think we threw out the baby with the bathwater with respect to the agenda. I did like the form. I didn't like everything about how the agenda was laid out, but I think the form was helpful.
You mean the, okay, I have to ask a question. You mean the style? Because with tonight's modification, the order is like it used to be. But do you mean the style with the boxes to check off the voting?
The whole arrangement. It was ordered, it was neat, it was easy to read. I don't agree with changing the policy at this time. There is legislative action going on in Concord right now that could require that anything addressed or dealt with by the board be placed on the agenda prior to the meeting, and that the meeting be posted 10 days before the meeting. Right now, our policy would kind of be in compliance with that. If we changed it and had to change it again, I think that would cause an undue amount of stress. I think we should wait and see what happens with this legislature rather.
Is this a change to right to know, Jim?
No, it's a change to school board agenda postings specifically. I do believe that there should be public comment on any agenda item before the agenda, or somewhere in the agenda, public should be able to comment on any agenda item, and then separately, any item. I think that the any item should fall at the end of the meeting. Maybe public comment on agenda items only should come after the board discussion instead of the beginning of the meeting. But I think that wide open discussion should be saved for the end of the meeting, when people who have come here to discuss items that are on the agenda have had their say and business has been transacted. Now, the agenda is posted. People come expecting to cover those items. I think that having people come before the meeting and before the agenda to talk about any item is unfair to the people who plan to be here to discuss agenda items.
I would agree with you.
One further comment, if I may, on that. Generally, it was advised by professionals at the LGC that it's not prudent to have an other business section for essentially what you just cited as the reason. And that's a little risky that we do that, because we could take up some such item that we didn't post under other business that the whole group in the public would be opposed to, and we might know that, but because it's at the end of the meeting and it's something we want to do collectively or otherwise, and to put that in as other business, even though it's posted as other business, which people, and on the other side of that, should say, well, there's other business on the agenda posted, the public should be there to hear what that may be, if there is any. So there's two sides of that argument. I think that the intent of doing public comment at the very beginning, and then I can tell you explicitly to do that with the deference to publicly elected officials speaking first, was as a direct result of an issue that the school board took up 2.5 hours into the meeting, when the select board representatives from Bristol were there to speak to us about an item on the agenda. And I just felt very bad about that and suggested to the board that this change be made so that public comment on items of interest to anyone be taken in the order of precedence that was on the prior form. And that was any elected public officials. Mm-hmm. And the deference to them was because they're out several nights during the week doing committee meetings and what have you, as you well know, in policy. in addition to the board meetings themselves. So that was the reference to that change. Having the time to think a little bit about items that we may have discussed, and then go on through other things during the meeting, and then before we're going to take action, I think that you will find as a board member, or maybe you have found, but I'm suggesting to the newer members, that you're going to really appreciate that luxury when we get into some controversial stuff. Because if you don't have the time to think about how you're going to vote, you may be forced to vote the way peer pressure forces you to vote. And I consider that time in between a luxury as a board member. Hear from the public and to understand what their perspective on this stuff is, because we are elected at their pleasure to do their business. And to be able to hear that public comment and then go forward with a vote on the incremental items that we discussed on the agenda is a luxury that you're going to want to continue. And you may change your mind if you hear evidence from someone that says something in public that is important enough to change your mind. I can tell you that my vote changed, and it was a 4-3 vote to not put the fifth grade, or the fifth grade at the middle school. That's why they're not there right now, because I was going to vote the other way.
And I'm not disagreeing with you. That's probably the best place for public comment on agenda items. But for non-agenda items, I think they should go to the end of the agenda.
I guess
And I also agree with you on other business. You know, I think that we shouldn't be using it.
it's risky, as long as we don't abuse it.
That's not new to me. We had other business anyway.
Well,
Yeah.
we used it discreetly. In
Yeah.
other words, we didn't
And
do
so
something
did I
like
last
change
week.
the
I mean,
whole
last time,
budget.
because there was a request at the end, and I said I'd rather not discuss things that aren't on the agenda, especially if they have to do with money. So, yeah, because people wouldn't have time to think about it ahead of time.
Because you do want to post it, and if the posting does go to 10 days, that's going to make it even more difficult for us to do things. Because there are times, I know Sue and I would, through Stacy, get the agenda out at the last possible minute so that it can be posted for at least 24 hours, because you can't include a Sunday. And then there's provisions for emergency meetings as well. But there's a lot to this, and I thought we had it on cruise control that addressed a whole host of other issues that this format, although it used up more trees, it was a better way, I think, and clearer administratively in so many other ways. You know,
Question. Ruby, did you start kind of this conversation with this BDDH form, public participation at board meetings? Was that the first thing this
Yes.
conversation started? Okay, so Vinnie, bear with me on this. I
Sure.
feel like they're kind of two different conversations that we're having right now, because I did look at this policy, and I do definitely have some concerns in regards to, how we handle number 6 of the policy, how we handle things that might go awry. And as a school board, you talk about having that little bit of flexibility. Do we have that flexibility in regards to handling, the public in a way where it can or should allow them to talk, instead of just always having them not speak? And does that get us into trouble, and what kind of wording does that take? I hear what you're saying, Vinnie, in regards to this agenda and, making it work for the public, and I agree with that 100%. I want people to participate in conversations. We do have to control it to a degree. Going back to last week's vote in regards to the bonuses, there was no discussion, much discussion about that. And as a board member, new board member, I'm looking to all of you senior board members to have that conversation. And that was a very limited, if any. So we do need to have those conversations. We do need to have that time to think, to process. But I think, and one other thing that I'd just like to throw out, and I don't know if this is a legal thing to say, but I would like to have this, look at that, the board setting up goals for the board. What are the goals of this board? Do we have that vision? Are they set in stone? Do we all agree with them? So,
That's our July P&D,
okay.
because we'll be reviewing the feedback on the board and at the same time setting goals. So that's our subject for that.
So there's a variety of conversations, I think, that just happened. And it's big. You need to have this public input and where it fits and where it's convenient and user-friendly.
In answer to your question, we did set goals last year.
Okay.
Traditionally, that was done in the second May meeting at the SAU board, the early May meeting at the school boards. And it was included on the back page of the agenda. We modified that when we hired Stacy Buckley and we put her goals in place on the back page. So this format allowed...
I've seen those, I haven't seen both reports, so I'll have to look at those.
Yeah, the format also allowed for the commercial, if you will, of what this board's vision is. Prior to 2 years ago, the board never agreed on a vision. And we discussed it at length, and then the subsequent year, we modified it somewhat after getting public input, I might add, that said that we should try to change to the best possible education, rather than, I forget what it was, the most cost-effective.
Yeah, sort of like the most affordable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, again, everything's been built around building consensus before we do anything. Getting the public's input to do that, getting the public to understand, including Sarah's presentation this evening about cutting of art teachers. There was a reason for that. The student population continues to diminish. And, you know, I didn't want to offer that comment to her. Obviously, she did a nice job on the presentation, but there were bases, if you will, for us to make the choices that we made. The size of the district is continuing to contract. So decisions like that need to be made, and we need to communicate that information to the public. We're very much restricted in public forums as to how to go about doing that. You know, social media gives us an opportunity to do so. Whether it's prudent to do so or not is a debatable posture. I personally feel, and would like to, have a town meeting sort of session with any constituent that wanted to show up. And I want to call it an Ask Me Anything meeting. And that includes anything except the stuff I can't talk about, okay? Because it's defined by law.
Okay, I want to get back to the...
But it would be an interpersonal exchange.
Right, but we've got to finish BDDH. So I guess I'm looking for, Jeff says it's not a good idea to send it to policy right now. So I need your thoughts on that.
Well, again, I don't think this is just about
But we,
BDDH.
that's part of it though, so we need to finish that discussion first. So, thoughts
But
on
is
that?
it- I thought there was a comment that already requires the 10-day notice, which you
It
think...
requires 10-day notice if you want something to be put on the agenda.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is what I thought you said they're considering at the state
That's what's
level.
been being debated, yeah.
What's being debated, I thought you said, is that nothing else can be on it and that the
Yeah.
agenda has to be posted 10 days in
Yes.
advance. That's very different from
Oh,
posting
yeah.
24 hours in advance
Right.
with a 10-day request. Yeah.
So I would also add, I don't
Yeah.
believe an agenda is required to be posted. You have to post notice of the meeting.
Right,
Current.
And currently, yeah.
right.
So what I'm saying is, I think that this policy hasn't been touched since
Like 7 years or something?
2007.
Yeah.
I think it can sit a while longer, at least another 6 months before we go messing with it.
Okay,
Well, if I may, there you go. I don't disagree, because we violated it for a period of time. Stretched its flexibility, if you will, its malleability, into serving our purpose by allowing a public comment on any topic, for example. That's why I would like to have the policy committee cover us, if you will, to say, look, the spirit and intent of the agenda change made in April 9th, 2012 was to open up the public comment in meetings. And therefore, when we get around to looking at the policies that were affected and need to be changed, it's got to be realigned in purpose with the then current intent of the then current board. So it's a separate issue, it's kind of a third topic, but it's probably something, to Ruby's point, that needs to be done. I'm just citing example after example of where we are malleable, if you will, and try to stretch the policy.
I think the changes in the agenda are an attempt to make things run smoother and not, as the public perceives, to hide things and be secretive. Nobody likes to sit here till the early hours of the morning working on things, and, you know, going late on meetings. I understand, and I myself would like to see meetings get completed quicker and all the material covered. In the past, there's been motions to say that, you know, meetings don't go past 8:30, and that doesn't make any sense to me. I think we should need to be here as long as it takes to get the job done. But I see the value in trying to streamline things.
There's a typo in this policy, so there you go.
I would suggest that you address this policy, but you can set a priority on if there's more important policies that need to be reviewed, that it may not have the highest priority to get it taken care of. Because,
Well,
Benny's been saying, you know, we're doing what I think the public wants us to do, so they're not really gonna complain, but.
probably
it
not,
should
but
be.
you know, I just
But it
don't,
shouldn't be.
remember Lloyd would complain about how the board, you
didn't
know,
follow
so I don't want to be that board. But, and I'm okay, like I said, with us changing the policy to reflect what we do and what we want to do. But in light of what you said about legislative changes being proposed, it probably isn't that smart to do it quite yet, until we see. So we just have to agree now on what we do practice going forward, at least for the time being. So the intent of streamlining the agenda was so that the public could actually see what we were talking about, because it became a hunt through all those boxes for some people to figure out what the actual content of the meeting was. And that's all. It wasn't to remove the ability to speak from anybody, and it was on there last time anyway. It just wasn't in the same place in the same order. And that's what I need your thoughts on now.
I'd like to say in Ruby's defense that she actively looks for public comment in many ways, and I certainly don't think that she would try to shut out any public comment. Maybe an oversight well, but nothing to, nothing to do with that, to shut out public comment.
Well, I would like to see us go back to the old agenda and try to make that work. For reasons that I think you don't yet understand subsequently, other than the little bit I could cite on the minutes situation that I thought we had solved with it. And then the simplified recording of the action that the board took. It was either approved and it got Xed off very quickly, and it's, as you've come to see, I think, probably to no surprise either, it's kind of hard to run the meeting and take notes.
Ruby, I'm
Yes,
sorry, can I ask you one question?
yes. As I said last time, we're being videotaped, we're being audio taped, we have a clerk here. I'm not worried about whether or not I get every single piece of it down. People were spending all their time checking off boxes instead of spending their time on the content of our, I think that they were devoting a lot of their attention to that. And I just found it, I was flipping papers the couple of times that I worked with that, flipping, trying to figure out where we were at.
I don't know who you have in mind when you say people were doing that. I mean, it was...
The board.
The process worked well subsequent to the meeting as the official written record with the ability to go back to the audio and the video and see if there was a question in the notes as to how things were recorded to double check it. And oftentimes you couldn't determine that.
Well, I thought they were good working papers, but they didn't have to be part of the, I didn't think they needed to be the agenda that every town hall posted. Sometimes it was 8 or 10 people because of the boxes.
I found it difficult to find an agenda that was 8 or 10 pages long. I think in the beginning that was true.
Imagine if every table of contents or direction for how a meeting should go looked like that. You've got to post this for people to look at and understand in a short period of time the content of that meeting. That's an excellent form for note-taking to the person that developed it and understands it. And I get that. I think other board members have too. If you're presenting a table of contents, how many table of contents do you see look like that?
I don't understand your point.
So the way that it was done, I think is confusing to the general public. I think it's a very good documentation of what happened at the meeting to be able to put things in. It kind of walks you through the process of
Well, here's an
people I
idea.
talk to is that the general public gets confused as to what are you actually addressing at the meeting, because you have to find it.
Well, here's an idea.
I've never had a problem. I'm general public.
Why don't
But
we
you're here.
modify,
Oh, I know.
Jeff's got the floor, go ahead.
why don't we modify the previous form? Make the cover page of the previous form a table of contents or a agenda that looks much like this, with everything listed off, and then continue to provide the subsequent pages for us to go through and,
So they could be unnumbered and you fill in the numbers prior to the meeting? Is that what you mean? Like, because
well, no, just on the agenda, the public agenda, would have to be a list.
they have to have the same agenda we do.
Right, so the front page of the agenda
Would look like this.
would look like this. And then when you went inside the agenda, it would look like that.
I got the feedback that says the opposite, Stacy, that with this format, members of the public said at least they can follow the meeting. So, and I could quote the individual who told me that personally, but she's not here this evening, so I won't. But the way this works administratively is everything you see in red is what I as chair would update on the template, okay? And it might be several pages long, and this page served the purpose of what are we going to talk about in non-public, or is there going to be a non-public? And it would go back and forth between myself and the superintendent. And things would change during the week. Things would come up, and this would have to change. So whatever we might have agreed to for an agenda would be a proposed agenda. And then the final version of that would end up getting adjusted. It would get put out, and then we added approval or modification of the agenda as presented. And that the board got to determine whether we had to make a change or add anything or switch things around. So we covered that. And the other thing that you'll note is the colored stuff here, the highlights, very little. There were just tweaks that were done that went back and forth between the chair and the superintendent about what needed to be adjusted. And one of the things that's really important, I think, is to substantiate the reason that this board goes into non-public session. I think that's critical. And here it is on the record. These are the 5 or 6 choices we can make on that topic, and this is the one we pick for that topic. Then the minutes for the non-public session should correspond to that. Then the only other item is this section right here. This is the discussion stuff, and it's listed in a real small segment. Item 9, A through J or whatever, however many items there were done in black by either myself or the superintendent, and then when one of us wanted to modify it, we would do it in yellow, and it would go back and forth. And then when we finally agreed on what the agenda would be that would get published, that's what went up, the final version of that. And it was just, I considered it a relatively refined and simple process. I would defer to Stacy to render her opinion, but then administratively, the last thing was the note to, in this case, Sue, who would always take care of this for us, is once we agreed on those discussion items, she would then fill out the action items for each in a corresponding box. To correspond with item 9, it would be 12, A, B, C, and so on through J. And so that it was done. And then we talked about stuff, we had the consent agenda, we had public input on the stuff we talked about, and then we recorded the action, and the choices were tabled, approved, amended and approved, defeated, on no action, or as noted. And the boxes were small intentionally so that when the minutes got recorded, they would be just a concise net of the action we took, because we had the audio and the video to back that up if anybody wanted to really hear what the discussion was. But the record was done, and it was simple, and we didn't have the issue of spending a lot of time correcting minutes. So that's the history behind it, and the things that occurred, I think this evening, a little bit out of sequence, had to do with manifests being done first, and then announcements and what have you. And then Sue would attach a calendar of events at the very end. And then the other 2 sheets that were on this were just the form for the non-public session that the School Board Association recommends that you use to record that and use it administratively. And that was just a convenience for me so that I had it when it came time to administer the meeting. So that's the history and evolution behind the form. The fact that 5 or 6 town clerks or whomever at the towns objected to this being a 10-page agenda, I don't give a damn about. I care about the fact that we are here to run a $22 million business, and we need to do it legally according to the law. This assisted us at doing so accurately and simply across several areas, not just what is read in preparation or for the subject matter of the meeting. I've said my piece on it. I feel strongly that having made a unilateral change to it without discussion from the board was a bad thing. To do so by eliminating public comment, perhaps by accident, was worse. But be that
It
as
wasn't
it,
eliminated.
well,
There were 2
I mean in the
places
position of doing so before we took action. You're right, it wasn't eliminated, it was just put at the end of the agenda.
No, the public input on agenda items only came before action, and the public comment on other items came after. There just wasn't a break between discussion and
Right,
voting.
right, and so we as board members had no luxury of public input before we decided to take action. I mean, that's the biggest problem I had with it. You know, if this, I don't know, that's just my strong feeling about the reasons for its evolution and what happened. I take to heart your concern about the policy issues, and again, as I said, I would like to direct the policy committee to cover us with a philosophy on policy, because we would just go nuts trying to adhere to all the policies. Have you seen that? That physical manual is at least 4.5 or 5 inches thick if you print it out. And there's no rhyme, no reason to the sequence. I mean, whoever decided to call policy BDDH, whatever that is, public participation at board meetings, BDDH, I have no clue. And no one at the School Board Association can also address that. It's a mystery.
Okay, any other comments on the agenda?
I still don't see why you couldn't post what we had tonight, the 3 pages, as an agenda. And also send out as an attachment this worksheet format. To me, that is not the agenda, it just repeats the agenda, but it gives you the worksheet. Why can't it be 2 separate items?
So if you want to use the worksheet, you do, and if you don't, you don't.
Yeah. And you could have them available at the meeting if anybody chose to.
John?
Just kind of thinking, Jenny's got, good points about, ensuring that we do follow the legal requirements. Just seeing, the news where that has a, big effect when organizations get challenged for not following the policies and legal requirements. So I guess I'm kind of thinking that, maybe you already had looked at Vinnie's approach and decided what you wanted to do. And if you hadn't, I might recommend that you now, based on his comments, look at his approach and how you think that can work with your approach.
I think Jeff and Sue have the right idea, that this can be our agenda, and we can have working papers for the board if they want them.
But, some of the legal issues, though, that he had in his form, though, I'm not sure
You mean about the reason for non-public?
whether they need to be added or not. But that's, I think,
Because the
something
RSA is on today's agenda for...
that you should,
And then I used his form for the non-public minutes.
but the disclaimers like that he's got in there.
Right, and like I said, I didn't put that on there because I wanted to see what we were
Yeah,
going to do with the
minimize
policy.
it.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
if you've already
And last week,
gone through that analysis.
I think,
then-
last week, I keep saying last week, I think last month I said, it's a meeting of the board in public, not a public forum. So if you speak, don't have the expectation of a response.
And that's very true, and I would also say to you that we're probably, I mean, I don't really know, but we're probably one of the few boards in the state that do things this way, where we have the discussion, we get public comment, and then we take action.
It might be the only one.
And that may be, but I've kind of gotten real fond of that as a board member because it gives me the ability to think about how I'm going to position myself before I decide on a vote.
Well, we did that tonight. I find it can be the opposite, because you can have a couple people who come all the time and they influence your vote, and although they're members of the public, they don't represent the public. And so it's just as important to realize that there are lots of other people with other opinions out there, and you know that anyway, so I'm preaching to the choir there. So I think I need somebody to suggest something here.
I do think we should take a look at the policy, and I think we should upgrade this or amend it to affect what we're doing and what we want to do, and bring it before the board. And if new laws are passed, I think we'll have to take it back again. But I'd rather see it changed now, and we'll just go back and change it again if we have to.
Okay, so is that a motion from you?
That's a motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
Which
second.
is that the
That's BDDH.
BDDH, yes.
Okay. Any other discussion on the policy?
Is that all the motions on was the BDDH?
That's all that
Yes,
this
that's all
motion
that
is on,
this
is
motion's on,
BDDH,
yeah.
yes.
Bring that
Okay,
back to the
so-
policy committee.
All those in favor?
Wait a second, there's more discussion on that if I could.
Okay?
I don't disagree with doing that because it's proper,
Mhm.
okay? The policy needs to be altered to whatever we decide is the way we want to run the meeting. I don't disagree. But I ask you, what about all the other policies that we violate? Are we going to ignore those, or are we going to change those as well?
We'll have to change them.
Well,
And I think from
or
time,
I have the suggestion, which I was going to take up under other business,
You still can.
and I may like to do that, of creating a philosophy policy that says, when we do something new, that's the revision we intend to make on existing policies that may be violated. That's all. And just let the public know that we are going to get to it, but because we have other priorities to deal with, we can't do it when it's necessary to do it. Because it takes 2 readings. That means 2 meetings. So this is a challenge. And I don't think we should just pick the policies, cherry pick the policies that we want to change because it came up because it's proven.
Sue, did you?
well, and I think we do cycle through the policies on a regular basis, even though it takes a long time to cycle through that many policies. And also, we also update according to what the School Boards Association sends us, because they update their policies to follow the laws, the regulations. So we're constantly updating policies. I kind of like that idea, your idea of a philosophy, if it's legal, to have something that's like that, and I'd like to look it over for a month before I would want to vote on it, but it would be nice if that could kind of cover us and let people know that we will look at these policies if we change our actions.
Okay.
I'd be concerned that opens us up to doing whatever we want to do.
Can I just pause and say that we actually have a motion on the floor about BDDH, and now this has gone off on the possible other business again. So is there any other discussion on BDDH alone? Okay. All those in favor of sending BDDH back to policy for consideration of revision, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
No, you might as well, no. I was going to abstain, but I'll no.
Okay, so it is aye from 5 of us and no from Ben and Jeff. Okay, so now we can have the, I hope, finish the discussion about the agenda format,
Just public comment now?
which means I'm looking for a suggestion or a motion here.
Well, I guess I would like to move that we go back to the prior format for purposes of trying to make it work as was intended and what I thought was working well. And continue to refine it. And I will say, and that's a motion, okay, I want to
Yeah.
go back to the prior agenda.
Okay,
Just
is
for
there
the
a
sake of
second
discussion.
then? Okay, any other discussion on this?
The only other thing I'll tell you is that there were requests that I felt, after checking with Barrett, Christina, that there were requests to do what you've suggested, which is to do a summary version of the agenda to eliminate, all the pages. And I want to say that I was told that it would not be appropriate to do that, because what you post is what you're going to talk about. And if there's a misinterpretation there, then there's a question of, should we have talked about it? Because it was just listed differently in the summary format versus the actual agenda that you used at the meeting. So I opted not to make that mistake by granting the request to save a couple of trees. And it was after I consulted with legal counsel. So there's some question about doing summary versions of the agenda for interpretation. And it goes back to the point that they recommend that you don't have other business on the agenda. And as long as you know, it's kind of okay to do that, as long as you don't take up something that you know is controversial and you try to push it through under other business, because it wasn't really posted for the public to know that. And we have not abused that. I mean, our philosophy has been to take public comment, take public input, and do things above board.
Can I ask a question of the board chair? Was your intent to create a summary
No,
agenda?
it's not a summary.
So those are words being put into someone's mouth, correct?
It is
So
an
the agenda that you created was supposed to be the agenda used at the meeting?
Well, that was going to be my comment too. That's not really a summary that lists every single item that will be on the agenda. And I would say you would cut and paste that to the worksheet, so the wording would be the same. I mean, that would make sense. I would like to maybe go back and get a legal opinion in writing, because I don't know, maybe you didn't quite understand what you meant. A summary kind of makes you think that you're not going to put everything in it. You're going to summarize and not list every individual item.
I'd be happy to provide the board with research on Fortune 500 companies, their board meeting agendas, people who have departments with budgets the size of ours, and give you a legal response to exactly what would be the best format, of which you can discuss and revise these agendas as you like. I'd be happy to provide you with research on that and what looks good and is good communication to the public, to make that communication concise and understandable.
I mean, at the end of the day, these both agendas are very, very similar. I mean, other than the public comment, which we've figured out, but, I mean, they're all, it's the same. It has the same items on it, it's just in a different format. It looks different. But there's
Yeah, I
very
mean-
little that's missing from each one of them. They're very similar.
I don't disagree, and to Mike's point, the summary of the succinct topic is always on item 9 of the 6 or 7 items we're going to discuss. So it's a question of whether you want to bolster it with the commercial in the front, goals of the board or the superintendent behind it, the listing of all the reasons you can go into non-public, a note at the bottom that says, please don't expect a response if you make a public comment, et cetera, all of the reasons why the rest of the bulk is there.
So last month you said the style was not an issue, but this month the style is an issue.
Well, it comes back down to the manner in which this change occurred.
But you want the old style.
I recommend that we go back to the old style and see if we can't make it work under the new chair.
Okay, so there's a motion
That's
on the
the
floor
motion.
to go back to the prior format.
That's the
Anyone
motion.
else have comments?
Yeah, I like to go back to what we were doing, the we being the 1 month that I was here before that. I honestly, I didn't totally understand it when I first got elected, just because it's new and different. But I think for a lot of the reasons that Vince and Paul has said throughout the course of the last hour or so, that to me, it's a lot clearer. I don't personally look at this agenda the way it's laid out tonight and see clarity. I don't see any succinctness. I look back at what we have for meeting minutes from the last meeting, and I think they're kind of overbearing. I think that there was some change in the way that the meeting structure was run. I don't totally agree with Vince and Paul. I do think that it's the prerogative of the chair to kind of run the meeting how he chooses under the confines of the policy. But I think this kind of a change is not, this is a very philosophical change that affects the whole board and how we do business. It's not blue paper versus pink paper. So I was a little disappointed that it didn't come in front of the board to do such a change. But I like the format how it was. Do I think it could be modified some? Sure, there's a lot of things that could be done different, but I'd like to return to it. This is unclear to me, and that's my 2 cents.
Anyone else? No?
It seems like most of the discussion, to me anyway, was around, call it the boilerplate. And, you know, if it's really that important for the public, I would think that the Inter-School Board Association would give you some advice on whether you need to, if you need to add all that boilerplate in, then probably should go back,
I did look at
back
about-
to the old form.
I did look at 6 or 8 other districts and they're like this. So I didn't just, I hunted, I really did. I looked at for a variety to see what they had in common and what they had that was different. Okay, I'm gonna call this question then. Okay, so all those in favor of returning to the old format, say aye.
Aye.
Is that Ben and Vincent Paul, I think? Maybe I should do each person. Jeff?
Abstain.
Christine?
Abstain.
Ben?
Yes.
Don?
No.
Vincent Paul?
Yes.
Me? No. Sue?
No.
Okay. All right, hold on a minute. Okay, 232. Okay, so that's Jeff abstained, Christine abstained, Ben yes, Don no, Vincent Paul yes, me no, Sue no.
So I'm at 232.
So the motion fails, right. 2 abstentions, 2 yes, 3 no. Okay, so now other business. Want to bring up your policy?
Sure, if I could. The first matter regarding audio, I've heard this often, and we haven't taken any action.
I thought we used to have things right in front of us.
We did, and it had to do, I think, Fred, if we could impose on you to give us a quick summary of the electronics arrangement here. I think that what we need to do is get new digital equipment. We used to have microphones here that would allow better.
It was for the recording purpose, yes. It was going into a DVD recorder.
Yeah.
But it wasn't for
Which
the
was-
audience to be.
Yeah, it was not to amplify for the
No, I
audience to be able to hear.
understand that.
Yes.
Not for the audience here,
Yes,
but it
just so
also
people are clear.
was better audio for people on channel 24, is that not
Yes.
true?
And we've
Yes,
had-
which was the
we've had-
purpose, yes.
Comments about the audio on the channel.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the audio portion of our board here is not functioning. So that has then led to recording using just the video cameras and the audio that it has the ability to collect. So
Right.
that's where we are.
So I would like to get the board to direct the business manager to solve this problem with maybe Fred's input and others.
Yeah, I think actually we're working on getting a quote for a new board at this point.
We actually looked at a couple things, one for cost, obviously this isn't something in the budget. The other part is, I've talked to the Bristol finance director to also look at some ideas about improving all the communications and also receiving funds for franchise fees. We actually get money each year. We have 7 towns donating. We have Comcast and MetroCast. Why are we not getting and working with these cable companies to receive equipment and bring these things up to pace? I don't necessarily think the taxpayer needs to pay for this one. So we're looking at a few options to improve that in a much larger scale, even from a media perspective. And there's a lot of, if you go online, you can see there's a lot of ways that, and they're dictated through the software that you're recording. So we're actually looking at many options for that, considering this is an item that wasn't in the budget.
Well, along the lines of it not being in the budget, there are anticipated surpluses at the end of the year, and at some point soon, I think you'll be in a position to tell
Correct.
us what
Yeah.
that may be.
Yeah.
We also have $350,000 as a retained fund balance that, I mean, we're rolling in the dough when you come right down to it. there is that opportunity for us to consider allocating some of the fund balance for this year towards a digitally approved improvement, a digital system. I think that's analog, is it not?
Yes.
Yeah. So, we got to do something about this because it's been an issue for a long time. People repeatedly speak about it, and as far as those in the audience goes, I think we just have to speak up. But, so that's a request, and I don't know that we
We'll
need
look
it.
at it.
Yeah,
I
we
know
are,
we're-
and it's, obviously, we have been looking at it, because we want something that is gonna solve multiple problems. I think you actually, with this setup, and even with the antiquated equipment, we could go out on the eBay and actually get the replacement parts for that, spend, $1,000. But what is that really solving? Because then again, you still have the question, your audience doesn't hear you.
Right.
So that's not good. And then, what about the ongoing repair of the equipment? Because then you gotta think of the future contents of that. So if we can create a revenue stream for the district and maybe even partner with some of the other communities around here, you can get a real media distribution for this. That also ensures that the notes, the minutes are well taken with very little effort. Right now, if you were to look at the cost of just managing your minutes, it's outrageous. So if I can save you on that too, you actually could I could give you back $30,000 for your budget. Okay, with a proper solution for this. So we're looking at several avenues, and we've talked to the town to make that happen, and we have looked at, what would be the cost of just repairing that.
As long as it happens prior to the end of June, because I think we've gone long enough without addressing that.
I find it hard to believe we don't have a portable PA in this school district.
The last time we
Well,
used,
that's right, yeah.
Recording, we do at the middle school.
But I mean,
middle school play.
just for this table.
They used to meet at the middle school. The board used to meet in the library at the middle school.
Yeah, it's pretty
And
bad.
they
yeah, I
did
believe the
that.
last time we used one was when we had the video that our former superintendent had in the auditorium, and we used Josh Malloy's audio system. He brought his in with stand speakers and
And we could certainly look at something
Yeah, but it
amplification.
was-
I mean, you can't, this is a small room, can't put a whole,
we have speakers in the room. There is an audio system over there that is connected to speakers that, if there was a way to just, I'm not even sure what's there. It looks like
Look
a,
into it.
I mean, there's honestly a laundry
A
list
receiver,
of
yeah.
things. If anyone
Oh,
has
yeah.
been to the middle school play, that was all like kind of a home, I don't even know how to explain it. While you have hanging from the ceiling a $10,000 product, why hasn't anyone ever looked at that being fixed? And that certainly gets used more than, a board camera. So we are listing right now the priorities for the district. So as we go into June, we're looking at, a couple $100,000 worth of priorities, and even including books and other things that the district needs, so this is what we're trying to prioritize, and then look at it thoughtfully through the administrator's eyes too, say, what's your building need?
But with like C-SPAN, when they have the, table up front with 4 or 5 different speakers, they have mics and it's being recorded as well as the people in the audience, can hear what they're saying.
Yeah.
So
In Dover, where I came from,
Yeah.
there was a mic at every station, it was amplified to the room, the media was projected, and it was
That's
also
my
projected
point.
live.
that-
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay,
They
So
should
we'll
be
look
able
at
to
different
do
options,
both.
we'll look into it.
I wanna do both.
Yeah, we'll look at them.
okay, the other item? You've already talked about it, do you just want to?
Yeah, I'm just going to make a motion, but I do want to make a comment about Mr. Riley's comments earlier. I'm concerned about where he's going with that, and the rules say that reconsideration can only be done by someone in the majority, so I'm not in a position to suggest that we reconsider action on bonuses, but I am concerned about where he's going with that.
Well, there are a lot of districts actually that are breaking the law if we did. Because this is not the only district that does that. And we've never, I didn't know we'd never done it.
Actually, according to John Vobel, we have done it
Oh,
in the past.
oh, okay.
Well, in any case, I'd like to move that this board direct the policy committee to study and consider a philosophy policy to alleviate ongoing administrative conflicts within our policies, such as, quote, all other existing policies and prior policies notwithstanding to the contrary, the official action taken to supersede any matter shall modify existing policies in accordance with the spirit and intent of the newest matter as voted by the board, until and if formally affected existing policies can be updated.
So that's your suggested language, which will be up to the policy committee. So
Correct.
what is your actual motion?
To direct the policy committee to study and consider a philosophy policy to alleviate ongoing administrative conflicts,
Okay.
such as, in this language.
You want the whole thing entered as your motion?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
It's just loud.
Okay, any discussion?
If this motion passes, I'd like to make a second motion that we consult with Barrett Christina to
Okay.
find out if it's appropriate.
Okay, so let's do this one first. All right. All those, yes?
Yeah, I'm against that because I think that opens us up to, you know,
Do whatever we
doing
want to do.
whatever we want to do.
Don't we
Which seems to be the
already-
concern right now.
don't we already have the right to suspend?
Yes.
any of our
Yeah.
policies?
The recommendation on suspension of policy is that you just include a time frame for which you want to suspend the policy.
So-
My concern with that is that we could do that. It's just that we'd have to, whatever action we take, we'd have to go through and spend the rest of the meeting scrubbing all the policies that get affected. And it's just impossible to do that. It's a pragmatic issue. So all this does is say, we understand that we might be violating other policies and we intend to update it, but we really want to do this new thing the way we want to do it. And we'll get around to it.
Well, my comment
That's all.
was because we're already open to doing whatever it is that we want. We don't abuse that. That doesn't change that, the fact that we can already suspend any policy. Or whatever
Yeah.
amount of time we want to do that. We don't abuse that.
It's a question of
This
whether
might,
it's pragmatic.
yeah, this might or might not be allowed legally, and we do need to find that out, yeah.
It's intended to send it off to the policy committee and see if you can come up with something. It might be
Well, since the
different.
school board's function is to create policy, any action of the school board is a policy.
By precedent, even if not print.
Right.
But if you're in violation of policy, then somebody can challenge that action.
Well, that's what happened in Guilford.
Did they violate their policy?
Well, according to the press, the policy of notifying students' parents or guardians that they could opt out of the reading material was not executed, because it's one of those things you just kind of forget.
And it isn't that the board didn't follow the policy, it's one of the individuals that were in charge of that didn't follow the policy.
Yeah, but where does the buck stop?
Okay, anyone else before we take a vote on this? Right. Okay, all those in favor of this motion signify by saying aye.
All right,
Opposed?
Opposed?
Okay, hold on. Abstentions, I'm not there yet. Okay, so Christine and Jeff, both policy members abstain. And I am going with Dawn, because I would rather consult on this before, anyway, so, but we have it, 1, 2, 3. So Sue, Vincent Paul, and Ben said yes. Okay.
So which way did that go?
That went to policy. So now you're,
Okay, so I just want to make sure we got the vote, do you have the vote there?
it's written on the bottom. So Jeff,
I'd like to make a motion that Barrett Christina be contacted and consulted regarding the proposed motion for the proposed policy rather.
Legality.
Yeah,
Yeah.
legality of the proposed policy.
I second that.
Would you agree to a friendly amendment to direct the chair to contact Barrett Christina?
Yes, that would make sense.
It is. You don't think that's a policy? I mean, you don't think that's something?
Only you and Stacy can talk to him.
I know, I'm just
Barrett?
thinking, but,
Barrett's not your attorney.
right, he's a school
Yeah,
board
He's a school
association
board attorney.
attorney.
Barrett will never represent you as an attorney.
Right.
I understand that,
Right.
but the school board association policy is that they only speak to the superintendent or the chair of the school board.
Well, the reason I'm asking about whether or not you really meant it to be me is it would seem that it would be a better idea when the policy committee meets, the three of you with Stacy, to have him on speakerphone answering questions, rather than me have a conversation, relay information to you guys, and then have you say, what about, and I'm like, I don't know, I didn't ask him that. So it just seems like I'd be in the middle, relay, and that might make more sense to.
That's fine with me, it's just that I know that I can't talk to Barrett, so,
Well, I mean, what if
So
Stacy
you can be in the
would...
room?
well, yeah, but I can't call him, is what I'm
Oh,
getting.
right, I know.
I mean, I can arrange a conference call with him at our policy meeting.
Right, that's
if
what I
he's
think
available.
would be a smarter.
But I think before that, too, it might be good to ask a written question and get a written answer, so we'll have something to start with.
I mean, I can
rather than
certainly-
trying
I
to
mean,
ad-lib at the meeting.
I can certainly
Send
send
him
him
the
the
policy,
policy
get a
and
written answer.
say, here's the information, what are your thoughts on it? And then I can either relay that back to policy, or if he has other questions, we can have him on a conference call at the policy meeting.
Maybe it's better just to send it to him and see what he has to say first.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's what she said, yeah.
that's what, yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to get an
I can do
answer
that.
on posting this separately, too.
Question on whether or not he'll be visiting with us soon?
Oh, wait a minute, let's finish this first. So,
Well, I mean, it's related to this, because we can have that discussion.
but we have a motion right now.
Yeah.
And then the motion was adjusted, was edited,
Yeah,
but
so
I'd
let's-
already seconded it, so
So do you want to withdraw your
I want to
second so we
withdraw
can
my
fix it? All right.
second.
So, how should this, we should word this now, so that we're gonna have Stacy?
Do we actually need a motion to ask Stacy to call him?
No.
No,
Correct.
you could just
Can
direct me
we-
to.
I direct you to call him?
Yep,
'Cause
and get
I-
feedback on that
okay.
policy.
Is that good?
That works for me.
Okay. Okay, then, next. Was it you that wanted to then discuss something else and I said, we have a motion on the floor? It was you?
No, it was sensitively.
Oh, yes, you did, yes, you did. You wanted to know about us having him come?
Yeah.
Yes. I would like to have him come and talk to us about social media. And so I was thinking about our June meeting, if he's available, and if not, then at our next available meeting. I did try to have him come earlier, but he wasn't available at that time. So I'd just like to tell him to talk to us about cases that might have come before him or across his desk to give us some guidelines on that. I know. We have the right to free speech and all that. I just mean in terms of like getting us into hot water as a board. And anyone else? Anyone care if we go ahead and do that?
I'd like to have them the sooner the better.
Okay.
So your June meeting, what time?
We'll probably have non-public too, right? We'll probably have some nominations. Well, we definitely will have, or we hope to have the tabled items for tonight. So, put them on the agenda at the beginning, like after non-public.
It's like 6:30 or whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
How long would you like him to speak for?
I imagine he's just gonna speak for a few minutes and then he's probably not gonna talk for half an hour. Do you think?
It depends. I'll be honest, the legal side of this is probably minimal at this point in time because I'm guessing there's not a whole lot of case law around a lot of it. I can certainly ask him how long he would like to speak for just because he'll know based on what information he has.
I bet he
I'm
has
sure
5
there's
to
lots
10
of,
minutes to say. and
I'm
then
sure
the
there's
rest
been
is-
lots of
I have several
boards asking.
presentations on the use of social media in school districts and the pitfalls of it, and I can give you handouts.
again, maybe it's as simple as he tells us to always put a disclaimer on what we say,
On what you
right?
say.
And that we don't represent
Well,
the
he
board.
has standard pitches that he gives school boards.
Yeah,
too,
and I think last time I
we-
talked to him about this, he said he was going somewhere else, and so I think he's got,
got
and in
spiel.
general, it's just, you know, it's gotta be cautious, but that every board member as an individual has the right to.
Right, right.
He addressed it at the
Mm.
state new board members meeting, and it was very individualized to some degree too. But I don't
So
know.
is it worth having him come?
I learned a lot from him. He's very.
Okay, then,
Okay, I'll talk to him
Yeah.
about the June meeting.
okay. Okay, any other business? Okay, so I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, that is at 10:33. And is there a second?
Second.